Hello and welcome to the June 2022 in-service. My name is Wesley Gaynor and today we're going to talk about HIPAA, information security, rights abuse and neglect, and earthquake preparedness and response. To start our training, we're going to talk about HIPAA, which stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. So HIPAA is a regulation that was just designed to keep your personal information safe. This is information that is collected during any kind of medical visits, surgeries, that kind of stuff. And basically, this regulation not just keeps it safe, but it gives you the power and control of determining who you want to share this information with. Now, this information we're talking about is often referred to as PHI, and PHI just means protected health information. PHI is any kind of information that can identify somebody by their health records. It's any kind of identifiable health information. And it could be a singular document that identifies somebody, or it could be bits and pieces of information that when combined can identify who somebody is. And so when it comes to PHI, it can be in either oral, written, or any kind of recorded information. And so now when you talk about how do we protect PHI, well, it's real easy. The best way to protect the PHI is don't disclose it unless we have a consent that's been given and documented. And only disclose it if it's necessary to provide it for treatment or providing care for somebody. And so here at Wendell Foster, a lot of times we have people that don't work directly with a resident, but we're concerned about somebody and we want to know what's wrong with them medically. Well, honestly, if you don't work with somebody, that's information that you're not privy to. You do not have a need to find out any medical information about that individual. So don't be alarmed if a staff member, after you ask them, tells you, I'm sorry, I can't tell you that because of HIPAA, because it would be a violation for them to disclose PHI about somebody to somebody that has no need to know it. Way too often, HIPAA is violated through social media without people realizing that they're doing it. And so what I have here is a couple of examples where this has actually occurred. In 2018, a Texas nurse was fired after commenting on a news story about a patient at a local hospital who was fighting measles. In the comments, the nurse talked about how seeing him suffer from the illness made her understand better why patients choose to vaccinate. Now, because the nurse disclosed protected health information online, she was terminated from her job, even after she deleted the comments. And here's another violation here. Imagine a nursing assistant working at an assisted living facility, snapping a video for Snapchat of a Alzheimer's patient because the patient was playing tug of war with her and she thought it was funny. Well, this is a true story, and she knew that the snap would only last for 24 hours on her Snapchat story, but it's still a clear breach of HIPAA. Now, in this instance, the nursing assistant was fired from the facility and is now facing criminal charges against her. You see, many HIPAA violations involving social media are accidental. A lot of times, people will post something not even realizing that there's PHI in the background that others can see. And so in these instances, you are held liable for what you post. So before you post something on social media, do your due diligence and make sure you're not compromising somebody else's PHI. Now, Wendell Foster Policy F12 actually talks about ways in which we can protect PHI. And one of the things it talks about is not sending any kind of PHI through emails. Any email system like Outlook, Gmail, Yahoo, they're not secure enough to send protected health information. So that's why we encourage everybody to use TheraP services here at Wendell Foster. You can send this information through a secure comm and it is safe. But Outlook is not a safe way to share any kind of protected health information. And so Wendell Foster Policy F14 actually addresses social media and HIPAA. And what it states is that we can post certain identifiable information about a current service recipient only in cases where it meets all of the following criteria. And we have three of those criteria. The first is that we have a valid release of information that is signed by the person and or their legal guardian authorizing the release. That means it needs to be documented, not just word of mouth. Second, this identifiable information that's released should be limited to only a photograph, their first name plus the last initial, and that person's association with Wendell Foster. It should not contain any information about a person's treatment or health condition. And finally, any information that's released has to present that service recipient in a positive way and support Wendell Foster's positive reputation in the community. In other words, when we're taking a picture of somebody, we need to make sure that they look good. They have a fresh shirt on. Take the clothing protector off. Make sure the mouth is clean, the face is clean. Make sure any residue of food, fluids, anything is off of the face. Hair is combed. We want to make sure they look as good as we would want to look if somebody was taking the same picture of us. So we've talked about HIPAA, we've talked about PHI, but really what does this mean to me working at Wendell Foster? Well, it's pretty easy. We just simply need to follow the rules. In doing so, it goes a long way toward keeping information secure. Sometimes, it's tough for us to hear about somebody being ill and not knowing the details. Yeah, it's been a long time since I worked in the cottages, but I still care for the people that I work with. And if I hear that somebody is sick, I'm going to want to know what's wrong with them. But honestly, I don't have a right to that information. Not only should I not be asking for that information, you should not be giving me that information because it's a violation of HIPAA. It's in these instances that if you desire to know more about somebody and their condition, you should be redirected to request that information from the case manager or the QIDP. They're there to help you if at all possible. Don't go to a DSP to find out, and don't expect them to tell you. And if they tell you that they can't, please understand they're doing so from the stance of HIPAA and our policies here. And talking about HIPAA and PHI gives us a great segue into moving on to information security and really preventing the theft of information here at Wendell Foster. When it comes to protected health information, or PHI, thieves really want to steal this stuff because they can use it to create fake identities and sell it on the black market. And so what we need to do is to prevent people from accessing our computers and stealing that information. One of the ways that this is done is through phishing attacks. And phishing attacks can happen both on email or it can happen with text messages. And basically, it's a fake message that's sent to you that tries to entice you or trick you into entering personal information about yourself, and your banking account. And here we have some common examples of phishing. Sometimes it'll come as a fake invoice from maybe FedEx or UPS, or it could be a fake message from your HR team requesting a signature, and in doing so, they need you to download a special program or app. It could also come in the form of a text message, and maybe a message from the IRS stating that if you don't click on the link and enter the information, that they're going to cancel your Social Security number. Trust me, they don't contact you by email and your Social Security number never gets canceled. And another one that's been more popular lately is a text message from what looks like a police department stating that there's a warrant out for your arrest, and if you click on the link and pay X amount of money, the warrant will go away. Again, the police department does not contact you by text message if you have a warrant out for your arrest, and you don't pay it off that way, at least as far as I know. So be careful if you get any of those. Now, we do have some policies and some just everyday tips that we can follow to make sure that the information we have on our computer stays safe. One of the policies is that if you do use a mobile device here at work to access Wendell Foster email or any information, then you need to complete the employee mobile device access form. And you can get this from your supervisor. But this form is an agreement between you and Wendell Foster that states that you will keep your device password protected. And this will be for every device that accesses Wendell Foster information. That you'll keep the remote location enabled on it along with the remote erasing of the device. That way, if the device is lost, stolen, misplaced, and unrecoverable, you can go ahead and delete any information that would have been on there, or you could track it down with remote location. It also states on there that you will notify your supervisor immediately if this device is lost, stolen, or misplaced. So again, make sure you complete this form before you use it to access Wendell Foster email or any information here at work. Along with that, a really good tip is to make sure you don't plug any kind of portable storage device into the computers here at Wendell Foster. And this includes your cell phone, because a lot of times they are infected with malware and viruses, and so as soon as you plug it in, our computer system is compromised. So make sure we don't do that. Keep everything safe here. And protect your computer from being looked at by other people by making sure that you have a password protected. A good password for a computer is really a great line of defense. If you can do two-step authentication, that's even better. But here at work, all you have to do is put in a good password, and it should be fairly safe, as long as you don't make it a password that somebody can guess. As long as it's a password that's not written down on a sticky note and placed under your keyboard, and as long as you don't share this password to other people. Make your passwords very unique. Make sure they have symbols, numbers, and it's something though that you can remember without having to write it down. Now, if you do use your mobile device here at work to access email or any other Wendell Foster information, make sure you put a good antivirus on there. You know, you can get the free ones, or you could pay for them. You get what you pay for. But not having it on there is very dangerous. You could get viruses so quickly, so easily. So go ahead and put the antivirus on there. Keep it up to date and do regular scans of your system to clean up any viruses that could be on there. Now, if for some reason, if you feel like your computer has been involved in an information breach, like maybe somebody's trying to hack it, immediately unplug it and notify your IT team. We have a great IT team here. These guys work really hard to keep us safe, and a lot of people don't realize the work that they do and how many computers they keep track of. So, you know, always thank you guys for what you do, and make sure we follow their advice and unplug that computer if you think somebody's trying to breach it and get in there. So to sum this up, information can really be easy to steal. And the information that we call PHI, Protected Health Information, is very valuable to hackers. So we want to make sure that we are aware of the risk that is involved in accessing this information, and that we develop good digital habits. And also take preventive measures by using a good password, antivirus software, and be aware of any kind of emerging threats so we can stay ahead of the game. Alright, so moving right along, let's go ahead and talk about individual rights, abuse, and neglect. So hopefully by now we've all come to realize that everybody has inherent rights. These are rights that you just have. They're not granted to you. They're not given to you. We're all born with certain rights. And a lot of times through our history, when it comes to people with disabilities, their rights have oftentimes been taken away or trampled upon. So that's why I posted up on the screen here that it is our duty to teach people what their rights are, and also encourage them to exercise their rights. And this includes the people that we work with. It should be part of what we do every day, is teach them what their rights are and how to exercise those rights. In doing so, we can empower them to realize their dreams and potential, and empower them to have positive control in their lives. So the right that we see right here is one in which people that we serve and support, even if they're a minor, they have the right to be made aware of their medical condition, their developmental and behavioral status, the risk of any kind of treatment, and also the right to refuse treatment. And there are several things I want to talk about with this. First and foremost, we need to constantly be having conversations about the people we serve and support, even if they have difficulty communicating. Even if it seems like they have trouble responding to us, or we don't know if they're even understanding what we say, we still need to do our due diligence and explain to them what their medical conditions are and what their developmental and behavioral status is, along with the risk of treatment. It's a dignity to offer to them. It's their right to know this. And they also have the right to refuse treatment. Now, this can easily be misconstrued. It's very easy for a person to say that, hey, I don't want this medicine, I don't make me take it, and for us to say, okay, and never offer it again. But when in fact our job is to dig down deep, peel back the layers of that onion, and find out why. Is this a lack of understanding? Is this a lack of information? Is there something going on here? There's a gentleman that I was serving several years ago who was refusing to take his medicine, and nobody asked why. He just said he didn't want to take it, and it was actually a very large pill. The gentleman kept refusing, didn't want to take it, and finally somebody was smart enough to ask why. Well, come to find out, the reason why he didn't want to take it was because instead of swallowing it whole like he was supposed to, he was chewing it up. And chewing up the medicine like that was disgusting. It's one of the nastiest pills you could ever take if you chewed it up. But that was the only way he could take it, and nobody thought about that. And so the result was, pretty awesome. He agreed to take the medicine if he could have it in pudding, something to actually mask the flavor of it. So when we're helping people exercise their right, we should make sure that we ask the right questions and do due diligence, so that when we're helping them make decisions, that it is an informed decision that they're making, not just one that's made out of misinformation. And people also have the right to manage their financial affairs as independently as possible. And we should assist them in doing this, encourage them to do this, and teach them how to do this to the extent of their capabilities. This could be anything from teaching them what the value of the dollar is, teach them how to count out money, count out change, teach them how to put their money in their billfold. It could be teaching them how you pay for something with money or a debit card. How do you balance a checkbook? How do you balance your checking account? All of these things lead to independence. It leads to empowerment. And if we can empower people to be in charge of their own finances, they're less likely to be taken advantage of by other people. Everybody has the right for privacy. It could be something as simple as, quietly and privately watching the birds eating out of a bird feeder from the comfort of my room through the window. Or it could be reading a book in private, watching TV in private. It doesn't have to be very complex, but privacy is very important to people. We should all have time away from others to be ourselves and to be calm and to relax. And just assuming that everybody wants to be together because they all live in a central location isn't really the case. And instead, we should assume that people want privacy and constantly ask them if they do and help them to have it and enjoy it. Now, the right for privacy also extends to treatment and the attending of personal needs. And what I mean by this is that whenever we're doing any kind of medical treatments, or we're helping people take medications, or helping people take a bath, get dressed, using the restroom, all of these are areas in which privacy should be extended to the person. We should do for others what we would want them to do for us. We want privacy when we're doing these things, therefore we should expect that other people want privacy also. A good example is when I went to get my COVID vaccine. When I went to get it, along with the booster, I was actually placed behind a screen for privacy, so that when they just simply give me the shot, not everybody is watching. And that's just for a vaccine itself. So that's a good indicator of how we should be doing things here at Wendell Foster. So when we're helping people take medications, it should be done in a private manner. We also know that every client here has the right to receive and send an open mail. Now, whenever somebody is receiving mail, we can help them pick it up. We can hand it to them, but we should not open it. Instead, we need to ask them if they want our help in opening it. They may not. They may want somebody special that they already have in their mind to help them open the mail and read the contents of it. So don't just assume that it's going to be you. Instead, ask them, find out, then help them with the follow through of it. Now, this right for privacy extends not just to mail, but also to phone calls. The people that live here have the right to send make and to receive phone calls whenever they want in privacy, unless they have a behavior plan or individual program plan that dictates otherwise. So what this means is we need to encourage them to exercise their right to use the phone in private anytime that they want. I've noticed in the past a lot of time people use their phone in the hallways or in a dining room talking real loud on speakerphone about with conversations that they probably don't want other people to hear. And when that happens, I always made it a habit to go up to the person and offer to help them to go somewhere private to talk on the phone. And most of the time, that's what they wanted to do. It's just a simple act of reminding them that they do have that right and they can exercise that right, and then following through with helping them exercise that right. So another right that I want to address is one that we all have. Everybody, even people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, have the right to live a life that's free of abuse and neglect. They have the right to live a life that's free of mistreatment. And because of that, we have developed policies and procedures here to keep people safe. In fact, we have stated clearly for everybody to know that the staff here at Wendell Foster must never use physical, verbal, sexual, or psychological abuse or punishment in regards to the people that live here. We have a zero tolerance policy concerning this. So in that regard, let's go ahead and define abuse. Abuse is the willful infliction of injury, unreasonable confinement, the intimidation or punishment with the resulting physical harm, pain, or personal anguish. Now when it comes to abuse, there are 4 types that we're going to talk about. We have physical abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, and sexual abuse. So physical abuse is any physical motion which causes bodily harm, or it could have the potential to cause bodily harm. Now that's very important. It could actually be physical abuse if nothing was actually physically done to the person in that respect. It could be where I swing at somebody and I miss, but I could have caused bodily harm if I connected with them. That is still physical abuse. This could be anything from hitting somebody, pinching somebody, spitting on somebody, force feeding, slapping, even just handling them roughly during personal care. All of these are examples of abuse. Now, verbal abuse is the use of anything that is spoken, written, or a gestured language that's abusive in nature. This could be me going ahead and flipping somebody the bird. This could be speaking harshly to somebody. It could be making a derogatory comment or calling somebody names. This could be cursing somebody. It's just anything that is spoken that can result in emotional damage or amount to mental cruelty. This could even be posting something cruel on Facebook. It could be an email. It's anything, any kind of communication that can result in emotional damage or amount to mental cruelty. Sexual abuse is any kind of improper touching or coercion to perform sexual acts with a person who has a developmental disability or with a minor. This also includes sexual harassment and molestation. So when it comes to sexual abuse, a lot of times what we see here with people with developmental disabilities is that first they are groomed and then it occurs. That grooming itself is still considered sexual abuse. Now, psychological abuse is when something happens that may result in psychological trauma, including anxiety, chronic depression, or a PTSD disorder. And examples of this include hurrying the person through personal care when actually taking your time with them will provide a less aggressive response from the person. This can also be ignoring somebody or ridiculing somebody, calling them names, being a bully. It could be threatening to punish somebody or depriving them of something. It could be telling somebody that if they don't do something or if they don't stop, that you're going to call their mom and their dad. That in itself is psychological abuse because, again, it can cause psychological trauma. including anxiety, chronic depression, PTSD disorders, and other symptoms. Okay, so neglect now is when something should have been done to help somebody, but it wasn't done. And it can result in poor health, it can result in physical injuries, malnourishment. Neglect can also be the failure to react to a situation that could be harmful. And so if you were to notice somebody maybe walking along the street and about to cross the street on their own and they need obvious help, and we failed to help them, then we were neglectful. So it could be, it's a very broad statement to say that an act was neglectful. But when it comes to helping the people we serve and support, it's actually very easy to determine what were acts of neglect. Whenever we have people that we're here to take care of and we fail to take care of them, we fail to help them eat, we fail to help keep them clean, we fail to make sure the interventions are in place, we fail to follow their plan, we fail to take care of their medical needs. All of these are instances of neglect. Now, what I've posted here are different examples of how neglect can happen. The biggest thing to understand is that just like with abuse, neglect is preventable. We all have plans of the people we serve and support that must be followed. We have care plans, we have medical plans, we have ISPs. We have checks and balances and co-workers that are in place to ensure that we provide the highest quality of care. We have supervisors and managers that are there to ensure that policies and procedures are in place and followed. So we shouldn't become complacent. We have these checks and balances to make sure that we don't let our guard down. Because the moment we let our guard down, neglect can actually happen. So hopefully now we have a good understanding of what abuse and neglect is. Now the bigger question is, what do I do if I suspect it's happening? Well, it's easy. Make sure the people that are in your care are well taken care of, and then report it. Report it to a member of management, or a member of nursing staff. Anybody in a supervisory or a management role in a position of authority, report it to them so they can follow up on it. But do not allow the people that are in your care to be ignored or not taken care of so that you can report this. You make sure that they're safe first, and then go report this so that other person can be safe. Now, when you report this, you need to do it as soon as possible. As soon as possible does not mean when you're ready to go home at the end of the day. It does not mean when you're ready to come back to work for your next scheduled shift. It does not mean calling a supervisor or a member of management the next day when you're off work to report it. As soon as possible means you report this as soon as you possibly can while making sure that people in your care are well taken care of and safe. Now, there are a few things to remember that could happen if you don't report it. First, just because you ignore it doesn't mean it's going to go away. Life doesn't work that way. If you ignore it, it's going to continue to happen, and it will happen again. And when it's discovered that you knew about it, but you didn't report it, that you didn't take care of the situation, then you're going to be held as accountable as the person that actually committed the abusive or neglectful act. And then you're going to be subject to criminal and or legal ramifications. So failing to act on what you suspect is abuse and neglect will definitely have you end up in hot water, and it will cause this abuse and neglect to continue without being stopped. So in summary, Wendell Foster has zero tolerance for abuse and neglect, and it's your responsibility to report abuse and neglect as soon as possible to a member of management. It's up to all of us to help protect those we support by watching out for physical, verbal, sexual, and psychological abuse. And now for our last topic, and that's going to be earthquake preparation and response. So here in Kentucky, earthquakes pose a really unique threat to us, and there's three primary sources. Here we have the New Madrid fault line, and then we have Wabash Valley, and right over here the Eastern Tennessee fault line. all of these contribute to a high risk situation for Kentucky. In fact, to help make the point of how high risk we are, let's look at last year. Last year we had 260 earthquakes in Kentucky. Now, 2 of those quakes were above a magnitude 4. And we can look further down, 95 were between a 2 and a 3. 160 were below a magnitude of 2. And these numbers indicate that Kentucky's fault lines are very active. So even though we did not feel the earthquakes, they still occurred, and they still show us that our fault lines are in fact active, they're alive, they're moving. Now what's really interesting is that an earthquake that occurs in California that might be mild would be considered quite severe here in Kentucky. Now I'm not going to bore you with all the reasons why that would be. Just understand that an earthquake in Kentucky would be felt much further away with a stronger intensity than it would in California. So if you're thinking that you need to move out of state and go somewhere that's earthquake free or that doesn't happen as often, you're looking at moving to North Dakota, Wisconsin, Florida, and Iowa. But just keep in mind, no matter where you live, there's going to be some chance of natural disaster. You can't always get away from it. But what I will tell you, if you have a fear of earthquakes, you should probably stay away from the state of Alaska, since they have the most earthquakes in the United States. Now, even though earthquakes cannot be created and that cannot be controlled, we cannot predict when they're going to happen, we can put plans in place so that when it does happen, our family can be safer than what it would be if there was no plan in place. So one of the best things you could do is put together a family emergency communication plan that has an out-of-state contact. What I mean for this is, if an earthquake was to occur, you want to make sure your loved ones are safe. So one of the best things you can do is have it to where your family members automatically call somebody who lives out of state to check in with them. Because the phone lines within the area may be down, but you may still be able to get a phone call out to somebody out of the state. And so if everybody calls and checks on that person and leaves a message, you can quickly get a head count of who is where and is everybody okay. Now you also want to come up with a plan of where you can go if everybody gets separated. Because during an earthquake, there's going to be a lot of chaos. There could be some missing people. You could have trouble getting to your neighborhood. Well, if that's the case, what if you were to set up a spot for everybody to go and meet if an earthquake occurs, in case everybody gets separated? Now, what I used to do for my family is tell them that if an earthquake happens, we're going to Hancock Park and we're going to meet up at the slides. That way, we have a central place we can all gather for accountability purposes. And another thing you want to do is go ahead and make up a supply kit with food and water for several days, and included with it a flashlight, matches, a whistle, maybe some candles, stuff that could come in handy so that if it's going to take 2 or 3 days to go without utilities or assistance, you'll be fine on your own. It's also a good idea to keep a battery operated radio in the home, because your cell phone towers may be out. You may not be able to get TV service, but you can more than likely get AM, FM radio signals. So if you have a battery operated radio in the home, you can still get information from the radio. You also want to look around and say, you know, if an earthquake was to happen in this home, what are my risks? Now, this means you should be looking for things that could fall down. If it could fall down, it could hurt people, it needs to be strapped to the wall studs. If items are heavy and they're on shelves, we need to put the heavy items on the bottom shelf. That prevents the likelihood of that shelf from tipping over. And it's also a good idea to look around and find out where your utilities shut off. Where do you shut off your gas? How do you shut off your gas? Where do you shut off your water? How do you shut off your water? And not just internally, but also where these utilities feed into the house. You know, figure out where your electrical box is and where the breakers are to shut everything off. It's good to teach everybody where this is and how to do it, so that you don't have to be there to walk them through it or to do it yourself. Now, if the earthquake was to happen and you're away from your house, maybe you're at work, well, you want to have a plan in place. You want to keep a bug out bag in your vehicle, and this bag should have maybe a couple of days worth of food, a change of clothes. It could have a small first aid kit, maybe a couple bottles of water. It should have just enough for you to survive on your own for a couple of days if you're stuck at work. You also want to make sure you look around in your work area for items that need to be strapped to the wall because they're heavy. This could be bookshelves. It could be oxygen tanks. You want to identify items that are on the shelves that could be heavy so you can put them on lower shelves to, again, decrease the likelihood of that shelf tipping over. Look around and make sure you know where your first aid kit and emergency kits are located. I check these monthly, and I swear it's like these things have legs and they just start walking off, and I always have to go hunt them down. They should be kept in the central location, and we should make sure that everybody knows where they're at, and if they are removed from that location, make sure we put them back. And people need to take the time to read the All Hazards Emergency Plan to be familiar with what to do during an earthquake and after the earthquake. During the emergency itself, it's the worst time to try to figure out what to do or what the plan states. Instead, read about it, get a little bit familiar with it beforehand so that you have a better chance of knowing what to do as events unfold. Now, as the earthquake actually happens, what you want to do is drop. You want to drop to the floor and then cover. Seek cover under a sturdy table or desk. And hold on tight because the ground's going to be moving. Hold on to the table or to the desk to prevent being thrown around or out from under. And you also want to help. You want to help people who cannot get underneath the table or desk. Help maneuver or position them underneath of a door frame. Lock their wheels if they're in a wheelchair and hang on to them tight while protecting their head and neck as much as possible. Now, when the earthquake has happened, there's several things you're going to want to do fairly quickly. First, try and get a head count of all the staff, residents, and visitors. This way you know who is present, who is injured, who is missing. And then, for those that are injured, take care of their urgent medical needs right away. Get them where they're stabilized. If it's been determined that the building needs to be evacuated, go ahead and evacuate the building. Then, locate the All Hazards Emergency Plan and follow it in what to do after the earthquake and for evacuations. Now, for the ICF, there's a copy of this plan located in the Young Building in the hallway right outside of Kim Trainer's office. It's actually located on the wall behind the safety data sheet manual. It's a red binder. If you work in outpatient therapy, you will find a copy of this plan at the front desk of Green Therapy Pavilion. You can also find copies of the plans for your department if you're in the ICF or outpatient therapy in the CEO's office, in your vice president's office, and in Kelly Turnham's office. If you work in the SCL department or transportation, any form of CLO, what you're going to do is follow your supervisor's directions in the event of an emergency. Now, for those that do work in SCL, you do have individual service plans that usually has in there what to do during an emergency, so it may make reference to, in this regard, to what to do. If that's the case, follow that. If that's not present, though, keep the people in your care safe, stay calm, and follow the directions of your supervisors and managers. Now, what you don't want to do is use anything that could emit a flame or a spark if there's a suspected gas leak. This includes anything from lighting a match, to using e-cigarettes, to flipping a light switch, using your phone. Anything that produces or uses any type of electricity and you suspect there's a gas leak, don't use it. Now, to suspect a gas leak, you will probably smell something that smells like sulfur or rotten eggs. Or you may hear a hissing noise. You may see water on the ground that's bubbling. All of these are signs that there is a gas leak. So if you see that, that area needs to be evacuated as quickly as possible. If you are in a building and it's received damage and you evacuate, nobody should go back into that building until it has been announced to be safe for re-entry by a member of Incident Command. We don't want people getting injured going back into a building if it's been compromised in any way at all. Now, it's not uncommon to have to evacuate a building or facility after a natural disaster. Now, when this happens, ideally, with the incident commander or the CEO, the vice president of that department, everybody is on site and they will make that decision themselves. But in their absence, the on-site management and the nurse on duty can work together to make that decision, but it's really important they inform the CEO and the vice president of that department immediately. Now, if the decision to evacuate's been made, don't worry, you have a look at the all hazards emergency plan, and it will actually guide you and tell you what to do and how to do it. The number one resource that we have to survive any adverse event is you. You are a valuable resource, and your services will be vital to ensuring that people stay safe. So, in the event of a disaster of any type, if you're able to do so safely, please come to Wendell Foster to offer any assistance that you can. Because in the lives of the people we serve and support, you are the one that makes the difference. And now I bring you Wendell Foster updates. For all those who are able to attend the Wendell Foster Benefit Dinner and Auction, and for all those who are able to help out, thank you. Thank you for contributing. Thank you for volunteering. Thank you for attending. Thank you for making it the huge success that it was. It's because of you that Wendell Foster has been able to empower people with disabilities for 75 years. So again, thank you. Thank you for being Wendell Foster. On Thursday, July 21st, 2022, from 10:30 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m., Wendell Foster will be hosting the First Responders Barbecue. And that's on this day that Wendell Foster recognizes the Owensboro and Davis County first responders. So please join us for this event so we can all thank them for the work they do for Wendell Foster in our community. This is for local and active first responders. Lunch is on us in the Wendell Foster Century Park. The Wendell Foster Golf Scramble is back. Plan for a fun day out on the golf course with us on Friday, September 16th, 2022. Registration begins at 7:30 a.m. with tee-off at 8:15 a.m. and this will be at Ben Hall's golf course. There will be prizes, lunch, and goodie bags included with the team registration. We'll see you there. And that concludes our in-service. At this time, go ahead and take a moment to complete the test and have it turned in to me, Wesley Gaynor. And if you have any questions on the information presented, please don't hesitate to contact me at extension 409. Thank you.